I always begin by moving my king pawn out, e4. Let's say your opponent doesn't get to move. This is how you should develop your pieces. Your next move should be d4. Now this is only, of course, if black hasn't made another central pawn move to challenge that square. So now your e-pawn and your d-pawn control this whole area of the board. This is very important. And also notice how your bishops are wide open. They can slice into the game. Your queen is open. Your knights can come out. Having your pawns on e4 and d4 gives you an excellent central control. Next, I would develop my knight to f3. There's a saying in opening play, knights before bishops. So in many opening positions, you'll have a choice. You can bring out either your knight or your bishop. In those situations, usually you'll bring out your knight first. So knight f3. Next, you might play bishop c4. This opens up your king to be able to castle to the king's side. Notice all the pieces are moving towards the center of the board. I'm not playing moves like knight h3. I'm playing moves like knight f3, controlling the middle. Now I might castle. My king is nice and safe. The f2, g2, and h2 pawns are in front of my king, guarding him. Very, very safe. Now, another important idea is that we don't want to advance our pawns ahead of our king, at least not too far. I often describe this as creating air, as if the king can feel a draft. In other words, if I were to push these pawns, say to h4 and g4, my king would get much, much less safe, because pieces could slip in the cracks. So here my king is very safe. I have my knight out, my bishop out. Now I might bring my other knight into the game, knight c3. And now my other bishop could come out, either to e3 or f4. Next, I would bring my queen, and this connects the rooks. This is a saying in development in chess, connect your rooks. If I have all my minor pieces out and my queen, and I castle, my rooks are connected. They're both ready to jump into the middle of the board, for example d1 and e1. In general, you want rooks on open lines, so probably either the e file or the d file or another one will have opened up. You want to put your rook on the open file, so if the b pawn weren't there, this rook would belong on b1. If the c pawn weren't there, the rook would belong on c1. You want your rooks on open files. This is the classical developmental scheme. But of course, your opponent gets to move too. Now notice how when I developed all my pieces, I never moved one piece twice. This is another principle of opening play. Move each piece once. You don't want to move a piece too many times. For example, I brought my knight to f3, my bishop to c4, my other knight to c3, my bishop to f4. I castled. My queen came to d2. Each piece has moved only once, and consequently I've developed all of my pieces. If I had moved my light-squared bishop to c4 or to b5 to a4 to b3 and then back to c4 again, then none of my other pieces would have been developed. A lot of people make this mistake. They focus on one piece and move it over and over and over. Don't do that in chess. So let's review the principles we've talked about so far. First, we control the center, moves like e4 and d4. Knights before bishops. You develop your kingside knight out to f3. Usually you'll develop the pieces on the side you want to castle first. Obviously, then your king can jump into safety whenever it needs to. Next move, bishop c4. Into the center. You can castle away. King safety. Then you can bring your other pieces into the game, trying not to move one piece too many times. Then you can bring your queen in, into the middle. Now this brings up a really important idea. Don't bring out your queen too early. Some of you probably remember that from the movie, Searching for Bobby Fischer. I used to make that mistake. When I was a little boy, I used to bring out my queen too early. It's very tempting because she's your most powerful piece, so you want to bring her to the game fast. Let me show you why it's a mistake. Let's say you're playing white. You play e4. Your opponent plays d5. And you take the pawn. Now, of course, you don't want to play a move like knight f3 there, because then they could take your e4 pawn. There's no room for mechanical thinking in chess. They play d5, and you take it. E takes d5, black responds, queen takes d5. Now, the black queen is coming to the game too fast. Now you want to develop your pieces while attacking the queen. Chase the queen all over the board. Say you play knight c3. The knight comes into the game, and the queen has to move. Let's say queen g5. Now you can bring another piece into the game and chase the queen. Knight f3. So now, white has two minor pieces into the game, and black's queen is running all over the place. Let's say he plays queen h6. Now stick to the principles. You can take control of the center and prepare more development. d4, opening up a discovered attack from the bishop on c1 onto the queen on h6. Let's say black plays queen f6. Now you want to keep the same thing going. You want to bring another minor piece into the game with tempo. Bishop g5. You see how all of white's pieces are coming into the game and the black queen is just being chased all over the place? After bishop g5, let's say black plays queen f5. Now, what would you do here? Bishop d3. Another strong developmental move, attacking the queen. Black will run away again. Queen g4. Now black's attacking our g2 pawn. He has a threat, but that's not a problem. We can simply castle. Take a look at this position. You wouldn't believe how often something like this occurs. Black's queen has been running all over the place. White's developed both knights, both bishops, a strong pawn in the center, and white castled the king to safety. White has a huge advantage here because he developed with principle, while black brought out the queen too early and moved the same piece too many times. So you can see how black's problems were all based on not following the principles, and all of white's moves, which were very, very good, were based on following the principles. This is how you should think about chess, and this is a great way to approach the opening.